Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. This is America's first sake podcast, and I'm your host, John Puma from the Sake Notes. I'm also the administrator over at the Internet Sake Discord and our resident sake nerd.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai, sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And together, John and I will be tasting and chatting about all things sake and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand.
That's right. And today, we're going to be looking forward to this weekend because it's going to be Halloween, Tim.
Yes. It must have been my favorite holiday as a kid for sure. Yes.
Really? Wow. Even like bigger than Christmas.
Come on, free candy, door to door. That was pretty irresistible for me.
Yeah. Candy is quite nice. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different today, everybody. Earlier this week, Tim and I exchanged mystery sakes. Tim gave me a sake that I have not been able to look at, and I have given Tim a sake that he has not been able to look at. And we're going to sip them. We're going to discuss them a little bit without knowing what we're drinking.
Yeah.
And then we're going to reveal and discuss a little bit more while we talk about our favorite Halloween memories, maybe. I don't know.
This is the ultimate blind tasting with a spooky twist.
It's our little trick or treat segment, I guess.
So we're going to find out if we got tricked or if we got treated by each other's sake.
I hope we both got treated personally. That's like my desire going into this treat. So ahead of this, we had our significant others pour for us, so we did not actually see the bottles. And Tim, why don't you grab your glass?
Yeah, I got it right here. Again, this is a sake that I have not seen the bottle. I was handed this glass and I have no idea what's in it. But my first reaction is that there's a bit of color here. So it's a light straw color. Makes me think it might be aged or something like that. I'm just guessing here. So yeah, there's a little bit of concentrated aroma. So it makes me feel like this might have some component of aging to it. I'm not sure. A little bit of concentrated aroma. Very interesting. And by the way, blind tasting is really hard for everyone.
It's very difficult, guys.
Very nerve-wracking.
Regardless of what you're thinking right now, if you're thinking, wow, blind tasting sounds really hard, it's a lot harder than you think. Even if you think it's hard, trust us, it's very, very hard.
And very nerve-wracking too, because who
it is
who
a little
wants
bit.
to say the wrong thing?
Because you're like, oh wait, am I misconstruing this? Because an aroma or a taste can mean many, many different things, and without anything to narrow it down, it becomes really difficult.
Yeah. So the aroma is concentrated, and I'm picking up. It just feels like something aged a little bit. Not a koshu, of course, not long-term aging, but maybe something that was laid down for a little bit. That's kind of what I'm taking away from the aroma. Not overtly fruity. There's definitely not tropical fruits here. There's no banana or papaya or anything like that. Yeah. And I'm not getting overt riciness either. So it's very interesting. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and should I taste it? Yeah. All right.
Yeah, have a sip.
The mystery continues.
The mystery sake.
All right. I would guess this might be just a touch higher in alcohol, a little bit of savoriness. There's a depth of flavor here. It has that kind of, like a little bit of a savory, again, it has a concentrated texture to it. Getting a little bit of just a hint of sharpness on the finish. But yeah, overall, very delicious. Very yummy.
Ooh, all right.
But
all right. Well, I'm glad I got that part right.
Very good. But there's some weight here. There feels like there's a depth of flavor. There's some umami. There's a bit of sharpness on the finish. Yeah. And just a word about the finish on this sake as well. I feel like it's a bit more lingering. I said there was a little bit of sharpness, but the flavor does linger on the palate. I'm used to drinking more crisp, dry sakes that disappear right away. And this one definitely lingers. I can continue to taste it. So the finish is kind of luxurious and long and lingering, which is very, very nice.
Is the finish like the more you're sipping it, is it coating the mouth at all? Are you getting like a little bit more of it every time you have it, every time you taste it?
I don't sense that kind of buildup like that. And it's not overwhelming. It's not overpowering. It's not unpleasant in any way, but there's a gentle lingering of the flavor. So it's kind of, again, for me, it's coming across as like a preserved fruit, like a jam or preserve or something like that, and a little bit autumnal in flavor, really wonderful depth, a hint of umami there. But again, we don't have overt, bright, fresh tropical fruits, and there's also not overt ricey characteristics or grainy characteristics. It's an interesting middle ground.
Well, it's gonna be very interesting when we reveal that, when we reveal what it is.
Yes.
But everybody's got to wait a little bit longer.
Yes.
Because I still have to taste my mystery sake.
Okay.
So this is a lot clearer, I think, than what you're drinking. This has a very, very slight amount of color, but it is almost completely transparent. And the nose is very pleasant. It's got some nice, a little bit of fruit, kind of that melon and green grape, which I'm a big fan of. I feel like Tim might have been shopping specifically for me here. This is nice. Also kind of the fresh cut grass kind of thing. A little bit of that feeling of that idea comes across. Okay, I'm gonna have a sip now. Ooh, all right. So this does have a big mouthfeel. This is big and thick and luxurious on the tongue. It is. It's a lot. I like this. This is nice. All right, let me think through it a little bit more and talk a little bit more about it. The fruit is there. It's not. Based on the aroma, I thought it was going to be a little bit fruitier, but it's not. It's actually a little bit more layered. There's some nice complexity, a little hint of like a spiciness in the middle, and it kind of plays and dances with the fruit in a nice way. This is interesting. I like this. Yeah, this is very, very up my alley. And now I'm thinking that spiciness I mentioned is a little bit more on the finish. It's kind of like it's a little bit how it ends. Yeah, nice little bite, and then it kind of drops off. But it's very pleasant to like resip. It puts me in a position where I actively want to have another sip because I enjoy the way this starts out so well. I just want to re-experience that over and over again. I feel like this is pasteurized, possibly twice.
One thing I'm noticing that both of us are taking a lot more sips of our sake this week than we
Oh,
normally.
absolutely.
Like maybe I'll understand more if I take just one more sip. No, one more sip.
Yeah, because you're trying to organize your
Yes.
thoughts and you're coming from
Yes.
zero. And so you don't have like something to fall back on and be like, oh, I remember this about this sake when I had it another time. No, it's like, yeah, do it right now. And this is it. And if you're wondering if we're going to guess what we have,
No, we're not going to do that.
That's an impossible task.
We could guess. Maybe we could guess like a classification.
I would say this is probably Ginjo grade,
Okay.
if I had to guess.
I think mine is perhaps a Junmai Ginjo. That's what I think.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm wondering, do we want to reveal? Do we want to talk a little bit about that? Once we know what we have, we can revisit the tasting.
That sounds like a great idea.
again. Good.
Yeah. And we can also talk about why we picked the sake for the other person.
Oh, absolutely. I want to say really fast that I picked this not specifically for Tim Sullivan reasons, but I picked this for holiday reasons. I picked this because of Halloween. You have been drinking Titan Shirigiku Mai Junmai. And the reason I picked it is because the rice, the Shirigiku Mai, is a zombie rice. The rice was extinct and they brought it back with only 55 grains. They were able to resuscitate this rice variety, and boom, now you have a sake made with rice that was once dead and is back. And as far as I'm aware, I think they're the only brewery making sake with this rice.
All right.
It is a Junmai, as mentioned. It is double pasteurized.
All right.
The alcohol percentage is 16.5, so it is very slightly elevated from the 15.5 or so that you normally see. The brewery is in Okayama, and it is milled to 65%, with a sake meter value of +4. So it's airing very slightly on the dry side.
All right, 16.5% alcohol. Shiragiku Shuzo.
The fun thing about Shiragiku Shuzo is that they are kind of rice nerds. A brewery that's going to try and resuscitate an extinct rice variety, and they do a lot of crossbreeding. It's like that's their thing.
All right. Interesting. Shiragiku rice, which I have never had before. And it's...
Really? You have never had this sake before? All right, I am now feeling great. I got you a sake you'd never tasted. That's mission accomplished.
Yeah, I wasn't picking up on overt riciness, and maybe it's because I'm not familiar with this rice flavor, but it feels very well integrated. I think when you have a Junmai sake that doesn't come across as like an overtly ricey, grainy, that speaks to the craft of the way that they put this together. And the fact that this is a revived rice strain back from the dead, like what could be better for Trick or Treat Halloween?
Exactly.
Excellent.
That was the goal. So I think this is a treat. Well, was a trick in that, the rice type is something that you've probably never had before.
Yeah. It was,
but the treat is that it's quite delicious.
It is. But so you've had this before, obviously. You know the taste.
Yes, I'm a big fan, actually. I like a lot of the sake from this brewery. They make a lot of interesting stuff like that.
Do you agree with me that there's a bit of like an umami savoriness in there? Yeah.
There is. And I think that's where you can point at being a Junmai, is that characteristic is something that's usually a little more Junmai identifying rather than the Junmai Ginjo.
Yeah.
But the rest of it's pretty Ginjo.
Well, exactly. The reason I said Junmai Ginjo is because the texture, which I didn't talk about, the texture is really elegant and very elevated. And I thought, given the structure and the silkiness of the body, I thought, well, this probably is a Junmai Ginjo grade. It didn't have the classic beautiful aromatics, again, not that fruitiness, but it was very enjoyable, and I just thought that I was leaning more towards this might be more finely polished than it actually was, which speaks again to what a great craftsman these brewers are. The texture is amazing. The depth of flavor is amazing. This is not something I probably would have picked for myself. So in that regard, it's a big treat.
Oh, fantastic. Glad to hear it. All right. I am very curious, Tim. What have I been drinking?
Okay. Well, you have been drinking Wakatake Junmai Daiginjo.
Ooh, the Demon Slayer?
Demon Slayer. Again,
the Demon Slayer.
Halloween themed. Demon.
A little bit. What was that?
This is, well, I wanted to go with something that touched on Halloween in some way, so I picked the Demon Slayer. So this is a Junmai Daiginjo from Shizuoka Prefecture. The alcohol is 16.5%. The rice milling is 50%. The SMV is 0. So that
neutral
kind of reflects the cleaner nature of the mid palate in this sake.
I have not had this sake in years, in a very long time. And it was a favorite of mine back when I was first getting into sake. I think we talked about this in the past. I used to go to Sake Bar Hagi a lot when I was first drinking sake. And this was one of their menu items. But being a Junmai Daiginjo, it was a lot more expensive than the other stuff. And we didn't know a lot about sake. So we didn't have it that often. We had it when we wanted to treat ourselves. So this is very nice. A pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I got to visit this brewery in 2009, and I'm going to put a picture in the show notes, but on the roof of the brewery building, they actually have a demon, a sculpture of a cartoon demon holding a club, and then there's a little worm kind of coming up to the demon.
I have a question. Yes. Where's the slayer of the demon? Like, there's a demon, sure, but like, wouldn't the Wouldn't this necessitate a being that is slaying said demon?
Well, the slayer is actually the sake. The sake disables the demon because the demon, his Achilles heel is the sake.
Oh, is this particular
Yes.
sake?
So when he drinks this sake, he loses all of his ferociousness, and you can get through the woods without getting attacked by the demon if you bring this sake with you.
All right, but he really likes the sake, so he's hanging out on the brewery roof to try and get some more. Even though it's debilitating to him, he likes it that much. That's interesting. I didn't realize. I didn't know they had any kind of a thing on their rooftop. That's pretty cool.
This picture is going in the show notes, but I'm going to send it to you right now. So,
please do. Please do. I need
you
to see
can
this.
react.
You know, it's funny. I never really associated this sake with being as kind of overtly fruity as it is. I think of it, and also I think I said the mouthfeel was nice and was thick and coating, but with the sake meter value, it shouldn't be, which is very interesting to me. Yeah. I see. So I'm looking at this picture of this Oni on the roof of the building, and he's just kind of looking at people when they're walking towards the building, kind of like, "What's up? What are you doing?"
But you have to admit, it is not a very ferocious looking demon. It's very cute.
He does look like his power has been sapped
by sake.
He has definitely dipped into this to the sake at some point.
So, true confession time. So,
okay,
John, tell me, why did you pick this sake for me?
Well, specifically, I mean, there was the holiday bit, but I really wanted to try to find something that you might not have had. And I think that when you're doing a show with somebody in the business and you are exposed to a lot of sake, you tasted a lot of sake, I wanted to kind of do something that you might not have had before. I didn't want to give you something boring that you'd had 1,000 times before. I wanted to surprise you.
Mission accomplished.
Oh, fantastic. And so what about you? What was your thought process beyond the Oni Halloween connection?
Right. Well, we've been tasting a number of sakes, and I got some comments from you about whenever I upgraded to a Junmai Daiginjo. And I thought, if I'm really going to give John Puma a treat, I gotta splash out and pick.
So you treated me with this luxurious sake category you've been drinking these past few weeks.
But I don't want you thinking that I broke the bank, because this is one of the more affordable luxury sakes out there. And I think that it's been exported to New York for many, many years. And I had a strong suspicion that you had this before. But there's been so many other premium sakes coming onto the market in the past 7 or 8 years that we don't get the same chance to drink our favorite old school sakes as much. Wouldn't you say?
I think that's very accurate. And I think that's part of the reason why I haven't had this in so long. There's a lot more sake available in New York these days than there were when you and I started drinking sake. There is a much larger variety, and that's wonderful, especially for people who want to try a lot of different things like we do. And then it's great for people who are learning about sake, because there's many more options out there to find the thing that's going to get you hooked, right? To find the one that you're going to really love.
Yeah. On the one hand, that's very true. But on the other hand, I feel for the sake beginner now, it may almost be overwhelming, right?
It could be. I mean, I don't think that hurts beer so much. And you have people who get introduced to it and start drinking beer. There's so many different, especially nowadays, so many craft beer breweries. You can go to bars all over New York and have all these different beers and never see the same one twice if you're going to enough of a variety of places.
Yep. I think if the quality is good, if the taste is delicious, if people get a taste of it, if we get them to take that first sip, they're going to be impressed. And that is half the battle right there. So I fall on the side of the argument that I think more variety is better, for sure.
I think so too. And on the side, it gets me a big variety, which is something I always want to do. I always want to try different new sakes.
Yeah. I was just going to say, should we both take one more sip and revisit our sakes after the big reveal?
Yes. And while we're pouring, since it is Halloween and we do talk about Japan a bit on the show, have you ever been in Japan on Halloween?
I have been in Japan on Halloween. I haven't had the big Tokyo experience, but I have seen very cute parades of like school-age children being marched around in their costumes in a little parade and getting treats. But it's a very reduced version of what we have here for Halloween. They don't go from house to house at all. Little kids do not do that.
Oh, so the kids aren't doing the house to house thing. All
but I think there's an irresistible urge in parents to dress up their children, and Halloween is like the perfect opportunity to do that. So I've seen some very cute parades of children, but have you had experiences in Japan on Halloween?
Yeah, so I knew I was going to be in Japan, in Tokyo specifically for Halloween, and I asked some friends who lived over there. I'm like, hey, do I need costumes? Like, do they dress up? And everybody was like, no, it's not really a thing here. And so I didn't bring a costume. And we get there, and some friends that we're with did bring costumes, so they dressed up, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna go to Shibuya, and we're gonna see what's
That's
going
like
on.
ground zero
But everyone told me there's no costuming. We get to Shibuya, and literally my girlfriend, now wife, Michelle, and I are the only people in Shibuya not wearing costumes. Like the entire city, the crossing and all that area is just a lot of people just out drinking and partying and in costumes. And there's me, no costume, and everybody's looking at me like, you told us they don't dress up. It was fun, though. It was definitely interesting to be in a different country for Halloween and see how things go and have everybody be mad at me because I didn't bring a costume.
Well, I feel like walking around in Japan as a gaijin or as a foreigner, I feel like I'm wearing a costume everywhere I go. So you kind of stick out wherever you go. So
that works. So did you pour another glass? I did. All right. Now let's have a sip and tell me about the Taiten Shiragiku Mai Junmai.
Well, what I was interpreting originally as like preserved fruit or aged fruit or this almost oxidative quality, a little bit, I was saying it might be aged some amount. What I was really picking up on is this very unique rice aroma that is integrated. It is unlike any grain or rice I have smelled before. So that kind of threw me off. It's a very unique aroma. But it does have that savory, I don't want to go so far as to say spicy or smoky, but there's this sense of something that is a little bit deeper in flavor and not light, fruity, and carefree, a little bit more concentrated and earthy. And but to me, it doesn't smell like classic Japanese rice aromas at all. So that's what I'll say in my defense.
Okay. I don't think you need to defend yourself here. Blind tasting a sake you've literally never had using a rice you've never had it's not going to be an easy thing to do.
But I want to encourage everyone to try this sake because it's really, there's a lot to dig into. I was trying to pinpoint what's bringing this unique, complex flavor on the palate. And now I know it's this unique, revived zombie rice strain. The Walking Dead of rice. Who knew?
Yeah, Walking Dead of rice, and I have demons. And speaking of having the demons, still loving this aroma. It's just a very pleasant, very nice, subtle fruit. And you don't have to go searching for it, but it's also not bowling you over. It's just there. It's in a really, really perfect spot. And the texture on this is just absolutely
It's gorgeous, right?
So very velvety. It is something that I think that you can recommend this sake, put this in front of anybody. And it's going to, at the very least, pique their interest in sake. They might fall in love with it, though.
Yes. I agree. I think anybody would like this sake. It is a crowd pleaser. It is elegant. And it is really balanced. And it has an emphasis on kind of all the sexy points of sake, I think. It's got the texture, it's got the aroma, it's got the really beautiful finish. It looks clear in the glass. So for me, it's got a lot going for it.
Yeah, and I'm very surprised at the way it does. I mentioned earlier that it does kind of like, there's that spicy hit at the end, and then it kind of ends. It just kind of, that's where we're at. And then I have to taste it again. I have to sip it again. Oh no. And then it just restarts with that fruit, gets reintroduced right in the front. You're reminded of how velvety and very, very rich that texture is. Now, rich may not be the right word for texture, but it is just so nice. It coats the mouth wonderfully, and so your entire mouth kind of gets the experience. And it's just so it's decadent, right? Is that the word I want to use for this? It's very.
I mean, I call the texture of the sake you're drinking, I call it silky. It's got
silky. I like silky, velvet, silk.
Yeah,
similar notions.
Yeah, very smooth in any case.
It's, as you said, silky, velvety. I think that it's in this really nice Goldilocks zone where it's not too sweet, it's not too fruity. It's got fruit, it's got sweetness. It's not too dry. It's got a little bit of dryness. It's not overwhelming you with any of these things except maybe the texture, which is something I want to be overwhelmed with, to be completely honest. And it's just so pleasant. This is a sake you can accidentally do a lot of drinking of, and in the past I totally have.
Yeah, I do want to mention one thing about Shizuoka, about the region where this brewery is located. It's in the shadow of Mount Fuji, so it's very close to Mount Fuji, and that's a volcano. So the water source for this brewery is exceedingly soft water. Shizuoka is known for, it's a region known for growing some of the best green tea in Japan as well. And so the water source is exceedingly light. And I think what that translates to in the sake is that finish you were talking about. So the finish is short, clean, and lighter. The finish here on my sake lingers a lot more. It's a lot heavier. It's more concentrated. But the sake with the super soft water from Shizuoka, from Wakatake, is, I think that translates more to that kind of clean, short, crisper finish. All right, John. So what do you think? At the end of the day, were we tricked or were we treated?
I think we were significantly treated.
I agree. I think we both got a treat, and that's going to make for a very happy Halloween this year. So happy Halloween, John.
Happy Halloween, Tim.
All right. Well, I want to thank our listeners so much for tuning in. We really do hope that you're enjoying our show. If you'd like to support Sake Revolution, one way you can really help us out would be to take a couple of minutes and leave us a written review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the best ways you can help us get the word out about our show.
Yes, and also be sure to subscribe wherever you download your podcast so that you won't miss a single spooky episode.
And as always, to learn more about any of the topics we talked about in today's show or any of the sakes we tasted, please be sure to visit our website, sakerevolution.com, for all the detailed show notes.
And if you have sake questions or suggestions, sakes you want us to try, regions you want us to cover, something about the Sake Education Corner that we haven't done before, we want to hear from you. Please reach out to us at feedback@sakerevolution.com. And so, until next time, happy Halloween, everybody. Remember to keep drinking sake and
Kanpai!